أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to our class today. I hope and pray that everyone is doing very well. So let's have a look at the rule in focus for today's class. Okay, the rule is Idgham-e-Naqis. Okay, but before we do that, let's have a recap of the basics. So the basics are that we have the short strokes. Okay, so in the yellow boxes, we can see some letters that carry the short stroke. So for example, over here, we can see that this letter carries a fatha, this letter carries a dhamma, and this letter carries a kasra. And we know that these short strokes require a timing of 1 second. Now in these darker boxes, we can see that we have examples of letters that are munawwan, so letters that carry a tanween. So for example, over here we have a letter carrying fathatain. Over here we have the letter ba carrying a dhammatain, and over here we have a letter carrying kasratain. Okay, and we've all learned before that a tanween requires us to make a nasal sound that lasts for 2 seconds or 2 counts. Okay, so for example, this will be tan, bun, khin. Okay, now in this slide over here, we can see 2 words from the Holy Quran. Okay, now in this word, we have mutaharrik letters. So you should all know what mutaharrik letters are. Mutaharrik letters are letters that carry a stroke. So in these examples, all these letters that have been circled carry a stroke. So they are mutaharrik letters. We also have sakin letters in these words. So for example, we've highlighted a few. So we've highlighted mim sakin and ra sakin. Okay, so these are sakin letters, letters that carry a sukoon. We also have noon sakin in these letters, in these words. Okay, so that's something that's common in these words, that they both contain a noon sakin. Okay, and that's something of interest to us in today's class. So the circled parts of the word is where the noon sakin is. Now, there are several places in the Holy Quran where we see a noon sakin, and certain places in the Holy Quran where we see letters that are munawwan, so letters that carry a tanween. So what we're going to do is now we're going to have a look at a few examples from the Holy Quran. I'm going to put up some surahs from the Holy Quran on the screen, and we've highlighted some places where there is a noon sakin or tanween. And what I'd like you to do is just listen to how I'm pronouncing that certain part of the surah. Okay, where the noon sakin or tanween is. Okay, so for now we're just going to hear how it's pronounced, and then later we will inshallah find out why it is that we pronounce that part of the surah in that certain way. So over here we have an example of surah Al-Ikhlas. Okay, and over here encircled red we can see that we have a noon sakin. That is followed by a lam mushaddad. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to recite this for you and just hear how I say it. Kulla, kulla. Okay, you can hear that I'm not making that noon sakin sound. Kulla. Now let's have a look at Surah Al-Lahab, in which we can see that we have, apologies, just one moment, everyone. Okay, so Surah Al-Lahab. Okay, here I've highlighted a few parts of this surah as well. So some places where there is a tanween. So for example, over here, we can see that there's a tanween underneath the ba. I would recite this as binwa, binwa. Next highlighted part is this. I would recite this as ran, naran, dhata. Over here, so this last line over here, I would recite this as lum mimma. We have a tanween on top of the lam, that's followed by a mim mushaddad, then noon sakin, and then another mim mushaddad. Okay, apologies, you can't see this properly, but this is a mim mushaddad. Okay, so I would recite this as lum mim ma. Okay, so for now, we're just hearing how it's said, cited, and then inshallah, we'll find out why it is that we pronounced it that certain way. Then we have Surah Al-Ma'un, and I'd like to recite this for you. So over here in the circle, we have a tanween, a dhammatain on the lam, followed by another lam mushaddad. So this would be recited as lullil, lullil. Let's have a look at Surah Az-Zilzal. This is another surah in the Holy Quran, and we've highlighted places where there is either a tanween or a noon sakin. So for example, over here we have a dal with a kasratain followed by a ya mushaddad. Okay, so I'm going to recite this as ya, yes. Then we have over here a ta with a fathatain, tanween, followed by a lam mushaddad. This will be recited as talli, talli. Next one, this is maya. Next we have dharratin, dharratin. This is recited as raya. This is a ya mushaddad straight after the ra with the tanween on top. Raya, maya, sharaya. Okay, so these are all examples from various surahs in the Holy Quran. Okay, so like I said, I've just recited to you some parts of various surahs where we see a noon sakin or tanween. Now, for noon sakin or tanween, there are certain rules that we have to follow in order to pronounce that correctly. Okay, so I'm going to go through those rules with you now. When a noon sakin or tanween is observed, a nasal sound is made. There are rules that tell you what that nasal sound is. The letter after the noon sakin or tanween is what decides the nasal sound that we have to make. So you must always look at the next letter. So if you see a noon sakin or tanween, we must always look at the next letter, and that is what will tell us what kind of nasal sound it is that we have to make. Okay, so this is the basic rule that we'd like you to understand. Okay, so and this is the rule of idgham. Okay, and in English it's known as assimilation. So a simpler word for assimilation is merging. So assimilation rules tell us how to merge sounds of certain letters after noon sakin or tanween. And there are 6 letters of assimilation, or 6 idgham letters, okay? So we have the letter ya, ra, mim, lam, waw, and noon. Okay, so these 6 letters we would really like you to start memorizing, please, because that will really help you, inshallah, in order to pronounce, in order to make your recitation good. Okay, so please do start memorizing these letters. And an easy way to start memorizing these letters is to remember the word yarmaloon, because these letters joined together form the word yarmaloon. If you see any of these mushaddad letters after noon sakin or tanween, there will be some sort of nasal sound. Today, we are going to look at 2 of those idgham letters or letters of assimilation, and we are going to focus on ya and waw. So let's have a look at what we should do if we see a noon sakin that is followed by a waw mushaddad. So for example, this is an example in the Holy Quran where we see a noon sakin followed by waw mushaddad. This is how it's written, and this is how it should be read. Min walin, min walin. I'm making a half nasal sound as I join the meme to the waw. I'm making a nasal sound in between and carrying it for about 2 counts, okay? Min walin. So if you see a noon sakin followed by a waw mushaddad, we must make a half nasal sound. Now let's have a look at what we should do if we see a tanween followed by a waw mushaddad. For example, this is an example in the Holy Quran where we see a tanween. So for example, this is a dhammatain followed by a waw mushaddad. This is how we will read it. This is how we will recite it. It will be read as la'ibu, la'ibun wa lahwun, la'ibun wa lahwun. Okay, same thing over here. We would recite this with a half nasal sound, but you can see that the way it's read, we've only carried one of the strokes of the tanween. So for example, over here, only one stroke of the dhamma has been taken, and then the waw mushaddad remains as it is. But when we do that, when we join the ba to the waw, we have to make a half nasal sound in between. Okay, so that's the rule for if you see tanween followed by a waw mushaddad. So if the letter after noon sakin or tanween is waw mushaddad, then we must make a half nasal sound. Okay, now let's have a look at what we will do when we see a noon sakin followed by a ya mushaddad. Okay, so we've had a look at waw mushaddad. Let's have a look at ya mushaddad. Now, if we see a noon sakin followed by a ya mushaddad, for example, over here, this is an example from the Holy Quran. We will recite it like this. Min yawmin, min yawmin. I have made a half nasal sound. When I join the meme to the ya, make a partial or a half nasal sound as you join the two letters together. Okay, that is if you see a noon sakin followed by a ya mushaddad. Now let's have a look at if we see tanween followed by a ya mushaddad. Okay, so for example, over here, this is an example in the Holy Quran. We can see that we have a tanween on top of the ra, followed by a ya mushaddad. This is how we will recite it, okay? One of the strokes of the tanween is removed, like we did before as well, and the ya mushaddad remains as it is. And we will make a half nasal sound as we join the ra to the ya. Khayran yarah, khayran yarah. Okay, this is raya. One of the strokes of fathatain is removed. The ya remains as it is, and we make a half nasal sound as we join. Okay, so again, just to summarize, if you see a noon sakin or tanween, a nasal sound will be made, and there are rules that will tell you what that nasal sound is. And the next letter after the noon sakin or tanween is what decides what that nasal sound will be. So as a rule, we must always look at the next letter after noon sakin or tanween. And if the next letter is waw mushaddad or ya mushaddad, then we will make a half nasal sound once we recite it. Okay, so that is the rule for if you see a waw mushaddad or ya mushaddad after noon sakin or tanween. Okay, so I hope you've all understood that, and inshallah we will carry on with this rule in future class.